Hello there and welcome to How to Answer Verbal Reasoning Test Questions. My name is Richard McMunn, and for the duration of this short presentation I'm going to give you a number of important tips that will help you to prepare for verbal reasoning tests and also to answer the more common type of question that you will have to answer during a selection process. Now, first of all, what I want to do is give you a few pointers for when you're preparing for the tests themselves. Then what I'm going to do is to come onto a sample question, and I want to give you some strategies that will allow you to approach the question more effectively. Okay, the first thing that I believe is important, that you need to develop an action plan. Now, action plans are fantastic. They can be used during any type of life event. So whether you're planning to do something in life, whether you're going through a career selection process, I always recommend people to use an action plan. I use them in every element of my life, whether I'm saving up for something, whether I'm trying to achieve something in business, or whether I want to get fit. I always have an action plan. The reason why I use an action plan is because it allows me to stay focused on the task in hand. Now, I do know that some people out there will only prepare for verbal reasoning tests or any kind of psychometric test the night before the test itself. Now, unless you're really good at these kind of tests, then I recommend at least 2 weeks practice and preparation before the test date. Sometimes this isn't possible simply because you may not be given that amount of time, but if you do have sufficient time, get practicing straight away. Now, what should you include in your action plan? Well, this will very much depend on your weaknesses and whereabouts you are in relation to having sat this kind of test before. Now, if it's been a long time, like me, since you've been at school or been in education, you might need to put in a lot more effort than somebody who, say, has been sitting tests for a long period of time. So the action plan needs to dictate what it is you're going to improve on. So that might be the style of question that you're approaching, how you answer the question, and also how much test preparation you're going to put in to the test itself. So for example, like I said, if it's 2 weeks before the test, then start practicing every evening and allocate 20 to 30 minutes time every evening on practicing tests. Okay, now you can get loads of tests. You can get loads from careervids.com, my website, or you can get books from Amazon. Just get loads of books and start practicing tests. And I also say that you should start timing yourself from the offset, and this is very important. People don't generally time themselves in verbal reasoning tests until it comes to the tests themselves. But when you're put under timed restrictions, then this adds an element of pressure to you, especially if you're in the real test and you're in a testing room and all of a sudden somebody says, okay, you've got 30 minutes in order to answer 60 questions, then the pressure is on. Unless that is you've been practicing under time restrictions. You should have an organised mindset, especially in the approach to the tests themselves. And an organised mindset is how you approach the question. So when I come on to a sample test question in a second, follow the tips that I provide you with when you tackle every test question, every verbal reasoning test question that you come onto during the assessment. Use the same organised mindset. Accurate marking is obviously crucial. Now, it is possible that you may not be able to answer every single test question. If you do leave one out, and that's a good chance that you will do that during the test, make sure you leave a gap or a space on the marking sheet, because if you make a mistake in that area, then the rest of the marking sheet is going to be out and you will fail the test. Pace yourself according to the allocated time. Now, I've done it before. I go into a test room and I see people around me who are speeding ahead, and that tends to worry me, and I think, oh, I'm getting behind. What you need to do is to pace yourself according to the allocated time. So let's pluck a figure out of thin air. You're required to answer 60 test questions within 60 minutes. That gives you an average of 1 minute per question. Okay, so if you have to answer more questions with less time, then what you should do is work out roughly at the beginning of the test how long you've got per question. Let's say you've got a minute on average per question and you find yourself spending 2 minutes answering a question, then you're starting to get way behind. So pace yourself according to the allocated time. Now, concentrate fully. Of course you're going to concentrate fully during the test, but This is easier said than done, especially with verbal reasoning test questions. More often than not, you're required to read a passage and then answer questions that are relevant to the passage as either true, false, or cannot say with the information provided. I'm going to show you a technique in a little while about how to answer or how to approach a verbal reasoning test question, but it all requires an element of concentration, and that means blocking everybody out of the room, concentrating totally on that question. And the only way that you can do that is through practice. Okay, use an approach that suits you. Okay, let me give you an example of what I mean. Okay, here is a sample test question. Now you can see here that we have a passage here. The question states, read the following text before answering the questions as either true, false, or cannot say from the information provided. This kind of question is common in today's assessment centres. So there's the passage of text which I'm highlighting now. On the right hand side of the screen we have 3 questions, and it's asking us to read the passage and then answer the question as true, false, or cannot say based on the information given. Alright, and that's an important thing to bear in mind there. Let's assume the passage was about uniforms, okay, and it said in the passage about how uniforms are made, but it didn't mention anything about the kind of people who wear uniforms. Then the question states, firefighters are required to wear a uniform. Answer the question true, false, or cannot say. Now we all know that firefighters are required to wear uniforms, but, and this is the important bit, unless it actually states it in the passage, then you cannot say it. Okay, even though you know that that is a true fact, you cannot say that that is true based on the information provided. And that's an important thing to remember. Just because you know something is true, unless it states it in the passage, you cannot answer it as true. Okay, and you'd have to put the answer as cannot say. Now, it says there, read the following text. Now, I'm doing this without any time restraints. Let's say you had 30 of these to answer. Can you imagine reading all of the passage? Now, you don't have to approach this in the style that I use, but I find this quite effective because I feel that if I read all of that passage, that's going to take me a good 30 seconds to read it, and then I've got to answer all of these questions, coupled with the fact that I've got to concentrate fully on that passage and remember things relevant to the questioning. That's quite a tall order. So what I tend to do is ignore the passage first of all. Okay, so I won't read that, but I will look at the question. And I'll read the first question. An employer may not offer you more than the minimum paid holiday. And then what I'll do is I will pick out 1 or 2 key words, okay, from the question. So those key words need to be relevant, not something like an or not or offer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on minimum paid holiday. Okay, let me just highlight that. So minimum paid holiday. I will then go over to the passage and start scrolling it, looking for those words, minimum paid holiday. Now all of a sudden at the beginning, I'm quite fortunate, it says there is a minimum right to paid holiday, but your employer may offer more than this. So that key word there, to me, states that that may be relevant to that question. Is it relevant? There is a minimum right to paid holiday, but your employer may offer more than this. The question is, an employer may not offer. So we know, therefore, that that is false. Okay, so I'll highlight that question. So I've answered that without reading anything in the passage. Next question. In addition to paternity leave, you are entitled to your normal holiday. So let me ask you a question. If you were looking at that, which word or phrases are actually they stand out? Okay, so they're not common phrases or keywords. I would say in addition to paternity leave, because the word paternity is not that common. So I'm going to scroll here. I'm going to read down. Those employers work 5 days a week. I'm scrolling down and I'm looking for the word paternity. There it is at the bottom. You continue to be entitled to your holiday leave throughout any additional paternity or maternity leave and adoption leave. So that is relevant. In addition to paternity leave, you are entitled to your normal holiday. Okay, is that true, false, or cannot say? You continue to be entitled to your holiday leave throughout any additional maternity or paternity leave. And the question is, in addition to paternity leave, you are entitled to. Yes, that is true, so we'll answer that as A. Can you see how quickly you can get through these questions without studying the whole of the passage? Final one. All employees only start building up holiday leave 5.6 weeks after commencement of employment. Okay, so I think start building is quite relevant, and also 5.6 weeks is relevant. So I'm going to look for them as I scour through. There is a minimum right to pay. So we've got 5.6 weeks there already. All employees are entitled to a minimum of 5.6 weeks paid leave per year. That is not relevant to that part of the question. Okay, so we can ignore that. I'm going to looking for start building. Those employees work 5 days. Scrolling through, there we go, start building. Okay, so I'll highlight that. All employees will start building up holiday as soon as they start work. All employees only start building up holiday leave 5 weeks after commencement of employment. So that is not true. So that is actually false. Now, even though I've not done that under time restraints, and I've actually been talking to you whilst I've been doing that, you will see that that is quite a fast way to approach these questions, and I would encourage you to use that. It won't work for every question, trust me, but try practicing this when you try different sample verbal reasoning test questions, because for me it does work. I'm not very good at actually scouring and reading through the whole passage because I forget some of the information, and then when I come to answer the questions on the right hand side, I've forgotten some of the information. So I don't follow that, read the following text before answering the questions. I read the questions first, and as I'm sure you can appreciate, this is quite an effective way of actually answering the questions. Okay, so that's a quick short video about how to approach verbal reasoning test questions. Please go to my website www.careervids.com and you'll find a load more test questions and tips and videos to help you prepare for any job or selection process. Thank you very much for watching.